Hello,
Hi.
everyone. If you'll notice, we decided to get on theme because this episode is coming out the Monday before Halloween. Woo!
Ooh.
If you can't tell, because the lighting in where I am is kind of washing the makeup out a little, funny enough, I'm a ghost.
Ghost. Ghosty.
And Colleen is a Beetlejuice fan.
I'm Beetlejuice
She works.
themed. I've
She
seen.
works for Beetlejuice.
Honestly, would need to be compensated much higher to work for that man. He is gross, but I do love the movie. Clearly, this is
Clearly.
the musical. I bought this. I've seen the movie. I'm a fan. So
All right, so let's get started with our we're gonna go to our chapter recap, and
boop,
I'm
boop.
gonna try to keep this one less lengthy than it has been. It's really hard, guys. Fourth Wing is
Hard.
like so much happens. Here we go.
5 chapters is a lot for this book.
It
Truly.
is. It is a lot.
Yeah.
Chapter 26. There is no stronger bond than that between two mated dragons. It goes beyond the depth of human love or adoration to a primal, undeniable requirement for proximity. One cannot survive without the other. From Colonel Kaori's Field Guide to Dragonkind. We open up on Violet reaching the military outpost, which took her 6 hours to fly to, which is the reward for winning the squad games that we left off in the last chapter with. They will be
It
at
really
this
doesn't seem like
outpost.
a reward.
It does
Just
not
saying.
at all. They're going to be at the military outpost for a week-long tour. It's called Montserrat, which is a real place in our world too, and I'm beginning to
Mhm.
realize that there's a lot of like she very clearly took inspiration from our world when coming up with the names for some of these locations. I just thought that was interesting. When they find out that they're at the Montserrat outpost, Rhiannon gasps a little and Violet's like, "Hey, what's up?" And she goes, "Later." We find out that they're actually really close to Rhiannon's village, less than an hour away on foot, in fact, and Rhiannon is desperate to see her family, mostly her sister Reagan, who was pregnant when Rhiannon had left for conscription. Violet tells Rhiannon that they have 6 days to figure out how to sneak there, and they sure as heck will. Love Violet. She's such a good friend.
Loyal. Also, did you know that's Rhiannon's twin sister?
I did not. What?
I could be wrong. I saw something about this recently and I was like, did I miss this? So I could be wrong, but I think it's her twin sister.
Audience, if you know the answer, please tell us. That would be
Please tell us.
wild.
Wouldn't that be wild? It would also make a lot of sense. But I could be wrong. I just saw like one thing about it. They're like, oh yeah, can you imagine your twin? And I was like, her what? When did
Yeah,
she say she was a twin? So maybe this is like a headcanon that someone has. But
maybe. Maybe.
anywho, continue.
So while they're kind of going on the tour of the outpost, Violet reflects on how her relationship had changed so completely with Dane since conscription. He's just not the guy that he used to be anymore, and she's really not the girl she used to be anymore. And it pains her a little bit how different their relationship is now as opposed to what it was their whole lives before. While on their tour of the outpost, Violet runs into Mira and they have a really sweet and enthusiastic reunion. They like basically scream and run into each other's arms, and it's wonderful. Mira is immediately happy to see how far Violet has come, and they rejoice in the fact that Violet's not dead. They make some really funny, like morbid jokes, like, "I'm not an only child." All of this stuff.
Ouch.
I know, it's pretty funny, and, like, the rest of Violet's friends are like, "Wow, the Sorrengails are super weird." It's kind of funny. Dane is also happy. He's like, "Ah," he's so happy to see them together, and we get a little bit of insight into their whole, like, relationship history. Like, Mira is very clearly super close with Dane as well. You can see that their relationship used to be, you can really see it reflected in the interactions between Mira and Dane. Like, they're very familiar with each other, so that was kind of cool. 2 days later, Rhiannon and Violet sneak out to visit Rhiannon's village. They decide to sneak out on this night because Mira is supposed to be on patrol, and they immediately slam right into Mira. And Violet's like, "I didn't expect you to be here. Aren't you on patrol?" And Mira, being the older sister, is like, "You guys were acting really weird during dinner. I figured something was up. What are you doing?" And
It's like
they
y'all are
basically
literally
tell
dumb.
yeah, that's such
Dumb.
like an older sister move. It's peak older sister to be like, "Excuse me, you guys are such idiots. Of course I saw you immediately."
Like, you're not slick. You're not spies. You're soldiers. Different things.
Complete even Violet, who's a very smart soldier,
Yeah.
still. So basically, they tell her the plan. Violet's like, "Come on, can you imagine if I was pregnant when you left and you hadn't seen me? Wouldn't you want to see me?" And they basically guilt Mira into being like, "Okay, I'm coming with you." So they all go and they visit with Reagan and the new baby, and Mira and Violet kind of catch up while Rhiannon is catching up with her family. I think it's really cool because we see their relationship uh through like they're catching up with each other, like where Dane has always been extremely protective and does not give Violet any benefit of the doubt. He doesn't give her any credit for how far she's come along and all of that. Mira, the last time she saw her, she was like, "My sister's going to die." But now she's seeing Violet and she's like, "You've come so far. I'm so proud of you. Look at everything you've done. I still don't want you to die. I'm still protective of you, but you're a badass." She even says, she's like, "You're a badass." It's very cool. They talk about how they talk about signets a little bit,
Mhm.
and Violet still hasn't manifested hers, so she changes the subject to like, "Oh, tell me about these new scars that you have on you." So Mira's like a total badass. She basically is a very she's been awarded like awards of valor or whatever the term is for her actions in like several battles and stuff. And so she's like this badass, she's good at war, and she has like all of these scars on her from all of like the battles that she fights in. And so they're talking about those, and Violet talks about how there seems to be a lot more going on than they're being told. Like in Battle Brief, the writers are not being told everything, and Mira admits that during one of her own patrols, she thought she saw a riot of dragons flying in the distance, but there had been no reports on them. And she makes like a comment like, "Secret missions are even above my pay grade." While they are talking about that, Mira also admits that she took that little book of fairy tales from Basgiath because she feared that if Lilith found it, she'd throw it out. And she was like, "I know how much this book means to you, Violet, so when we get back to the outpost, I'm giving it to you. You can have it." So the book that Violet hadn't been able to retrieve from the library, from the archives, in fact, she now has that copy with her. I think that means that it's important. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. But
Wink, wink.
and then they talk a little bit about then they kind of the conversation shifts to like Xaden and mated dragons, and Violet's like, "Do you know of anyone who has mated dragons?" And Mira, I think she said she maybe knows one, but they're kind of discussing like how long exactly can they be apart. And a voice comes from the shadows, and it's Xaden, and he goes, "Apparently 3 days."
So this is the part that I screamed in the book, by the way. This was the part that I got excited about when he showed
Yes.
up.
Yes, he was like, "Apparently only 3 days can we be apart." And what that means is that Xaden found them at so the funniest thing about that, which I don't think I totally realized the first time I read it, is Xaden found them at Rhiannon's family's house.
Yeah.
Like, literally, like, Sigale was like, "Taryn is here, we're going," and Xaden's like, "Okay, I guess we're going."
He's like, this is not where we're supposed to go. She's like, I do not care.
Yeah.
We are going here.
She's like, "This is where we are, so deal."
Mhm.
Alright, chapter 27. For valor above and beyond the call of duty in the Battle of Strathmore, where her bravery resulted not only in the destruction of a battery behind enemy lines, but also saved the lives of an entire company of infantry, I recommend Mira Sorrengail receive the Star of Navarre. But if the criterion is not met, which I assure you it has been, downgrading to the Order of the Talon would be a shame, but sufficient. Recommendation for award from Major Potsdam to General Sorrengail. Side note, the first time I read this, I don't think I processed the fact that that was written to Mira's mother. I get that
Yeah,
she's General Sorrengail, but it's like, hey, your daughter did a really great thing. Even if you don't think it's that impressive, you should probably give her this impressive award. Their
literally
family's,
everyone sees her bad parenting skills. Everyone.
yeah, her family is
Literally everyone.
interesting. Okay, so it's the morning after Xaden unceremoniously appears at the tour of the military outpost. Mira hasn't spoken to Xaden, and Dane keeps making snide remarks about him, and it's all making Violet extremely uncomfortable, on top of the fact that she's uncomfortably aware of Xaden's presence. She's like, oh my god, he's here, and she's very distracted by him. They're all sitting in a room and basically doing like battle brief, but real life battle brief slash Mira's giving them a scenario to like tease out a strategy for. They find out that third years are often called to the front to sit in on strategy rooms like this because the troops have been called out for some emergency somewhere more often, which is like news to everyone, including Dane. Not to Xaden. Xaden and the other third year that's with him is like, yeah, we get called out all the time. Violet realizes that Xaden's year, the third years, they're going to be the first who will be riding with the marked ones in battle, and she ponders like the emotional implications of that. Basically, Mira is like a lot of people in Basgiath is very openly biased or prejudiced towards the marked ones, and Violet is like, well, no one has ever actually ridden into battle with them. This is going to be the first time that they do that when Xaden goes, because he is the oldest of the conscripted marked ones. There is an argument about who will play leader in an exercise that Mira is giving the riders, and this is the first time that we realize that Xaden can speak into Violet's head, so that's fun. So basically, they're like kind of arguing, and then Mira mutters, or Violet mutters something under her breath, like saying some snide remark, I think, about Xaden. And as she's looking at him, Xaden says something back to her, and she's like, his mouth didn't move, which means that he was in my head. So let's take count here. So now that means that because of the whole mated dragons bonding thing, she can talk to Andarna, Taryn, Sigale, and Xaden mind to mind, which is wild to me.
Very crowded up in her brain. Bless her.
Yes, I know, poor Violet.
Yeah.
So Dane makes a scene in front of everyone and hurls insults at Xaden. And basically, they like have a little scuffle, a verbal scuffle about like, well, who's gonna play the leader in this? My wing leader shouldn't even be here, all of this stuff. And Mira's like, excuse me, this is crazy. Like, focus, shut up and focus. They do end up making Dane the leader, and his mission is to get into a space and do like a retrieval without getting caught. And he's supposed to use all of his people on his team, their powers, and basically put them in the best position to carry out the mission without getting caught. Violet is annoyed that Dane refuses to use Xaden, even though his signet would assist in their hypothetical mission. It's very annoying, and I wrote agreed. While she's doing that, basically she ponders about signets a little bit more, and she thinks about what Sigale told her about signets. What had Sigale said about signets? It reflects who you are to the core of your being. It makes sense. Mira is protective, so she can do the wards. Dane has to know everything so he can see people's recent memories. And Xaden has secrets. That's why his powers are shadows.
Ooh.
Exactly. Violet is trying to figure out how to talk to Xaden back mind to mind, and Taryn kind of helps her in theory. She basically needs to find the pathway to Xaden in that same archives mind thing that she has going on. Once they've finished their exercise, Mira calls Dane, Xaden, and Violet into a side room. She tells Dane off for his behavior. He's acting ridiculous and unprofessional. And she also tells Dane to shut up about his feelings about Violet bonding to Xaden's dragon's mate. The way he's acting makes Mira regret telling Violet to seek him out. I was so rude. I was like, yes, Mira, finally someone says it. And she's basically like, figure your shit out, you know? Like,
Mhm.
it's destroying your team and everyone can see it. So, like, figure this out. So, after she basically tells Dane off, he leaves the room and she confronts Xaden about their dragons being mated. She's worried about Violet's future. Xaden will always be the more powerful rider because Violet We'll need to miss lessons and practice in order to go and fly to him, which means that she'll remain underpowered, basically. And she tells Violet to really think about her situation, even though there's really nothing anyone can do about it. Xaden interjects, he's there, and Mira's like, yeah, I know you're right here. And he's like, no, you don't understand, I am here. Mira wasn't called back early. She wasn't the one whose dragon forced their way through the mental bonds and dragged them out of bed and flew 6 hours. It was me. I'm here. As they're arguing, and I mean, like, Mira is like, oh, I mean, I guess that's true. So it's like tented, like, they don't really know what they're going to do about it, but Mira's not as worried. And as they're
Yeah.
arguing, suddenly Mira goes silent. There's a grift of griffin riders on their way, and the wards are down. The chapter ends in just basically like a whole like it's chaos. Violet is begging to be allowed to stay and help fight. Taryn and Sigale are off somewhere. I think it says that they're trying to do as much as they can before coming to get Violet and Xaden. Mira's like, I'm trust. You want me to trust you, Xaden? Get her out of here. And so he basically gets Violet out of there despite her protests, and that is where chapter 27 ends. Which brings us to chapter 28.
Also, just a tidbit, when she is screaming, because I listened to this book, when she's screaming that she's gonna hate everyone if they don't let her stay, it's heartbreaking.
It is. Agreed. It's so sad and it's so like relatable too. She's like, it's
Oh
my
yeah.
sister. I can't lose her too. Like,
Yeah.
it's really sad. It
Ugh.
also like really puts the reality of what they're doing at Basgiath like into very clear focus. So, okay, chapter 28. Winning the war games isn't about strength, it's about cunning. To know how to strike, you have to understand where your enemies, your friends, are most vulnerable. No one stays friends forever, Mira. Eventually, those closest to us become our enemies in some way, even if it's through well intentioned love or apathy, or if we live long enough to become their villains. Page 80 of the Book of Brennan. Also, a
I
very
don't like that
interesting.
foreshadowing.
Yeah,
Right? I feel like that's foreshadowing and I'm stressed.
there is a reason that that is in here.
And I don't think it gets resolved in this book. I mean, I guess it kind of, but like,
I
I don't know.
I don't think it does. I think
Don't
I'm
either.
realizing on this read that there's like a lot of setup for I hope book 3 because if it's not book 3, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself.
I think there's 5 books, by the way.
Lord, save me.
I'm like, I would have been fine with 3. I would have been
Yeah,
fine with 3, but
make it an easy
I'm glad she got
trilogy.
5.
It's fine.
No,
It's
5 is
fine.
great. But
Yeah. Okay, chapter 28. 2 days later, Violet is still upset and feeling really guilty about leaving her sister. Xaden brings Violet coffee and they talk a little bit about their feelings for one another and also just about a lot of things in general. Violet doesn't know much about Xaden, so what Mira was saying to her kind of rings true. And she also asks Xaden when he started caring for her, basically, and he basically has no idea. He's like, I don't know, when people tried to kill you, when this happened, when that happened. Basically, he's been obsessed with her forever.
yeah, she's pretty.
Yeah.
Fair.
They practice mind speaking to one another, and it gets, like, of course, a little flirty, which, of course.
Yeah.
Violet finds out that Mira is fine. She basically, like, strong arms Professor Markham into telling her that Mira is fine. She's like, I don't care if it's against protocol. I was there. She is my sister. Is she alive? Great. Sounds good.
This is the plus of being General Sorrengail's daughter.
Yeah, for sure. So she basically, when she finds out that Mira is fine, she like starts getting really emotional and she doesn't want anyone to see that because that's considered a weakness. So she runs out to meet with Andarna and basically cries in relief to Andarna, who is, of course, very supportive and she's just there for her. She like hugs her and it's a very sweet moment. Violet has decided that she needs to learn more about Xaden, so she starts asking him a question a day. One tidbit we get is that his favorite food is chocolate cake, which I think is maybe my
Oh,
favorite thing about him.
absolutely perfect.
It's so
Valid
cute.
choice. It's also like not what I think of when people ask for food. That's like favorite dessert, not food.
Right. It's like the most
Yeah.
adorable thing I've ever heard. We
It
find
shows
out
their
that
age.
it does. We find out that he's
Yeah.
23. He had just turned 23 in March, which means, I think, doesn't that mean that he is in Aries?
Either an Aries or a Pisces. It depends on when his birthday is, because
Okay,
I was born in March and I'm a Pisces. So it's either a
that's
Pisces or an
right.
Aries.
I'll have to look up the
Yes.
date later and we
I will
should
look it up now
we
while you're
should
doing
break
this.
down break down his astrological sign.
We should break down everyone's. That's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, okay.
The end of the first year approaches along with the war games, which are different from which are different from squad games, where the wings will battle against each other in battle scenarios, and apparently people do in fact die in these. So yay for Jack, who's still kicking, who maybe has a second, fourth, 11th, 10th chance at killing Violet, only to fail again probably. Violet feels like Xaden and even Taryn are being secretive, but she doesn't have too much time to think about it. On the morning of the first activity of the War Games, Violet finds out that Fourth Wing will be facing First Wing, which is in fact Jack Barlow's wing. Oh, we also get a little tidbit that Xaden's door in Violet's mind is sparkling shadows, so that's fun.
It's like it's like black matter.
Exactly.
Like the black
Exactly.
matter situation. Yeah.
Exactly. And bring on Capture the Flag. The first battle game thing is basically
Ah,
a capture the flag scenario. First Wing is guarding an egg, a crystal egg that they need to capture, while they will be defending a flag against First Wing as well. But apparently eggs are worth more points, so if Fourth Wing does manage to capture the egg, it's gonna be better for them. When they get to the field, Violet sees that Taryn is wearing a custom saddle for Violet to sit in so that she could ride and stay on his back without him using his magic to hold her in place. Xaden and Taryn have been working on the surprise for Violet, and since there are no rules specifically against it, Violet, after some coercing, agrees that she will use the saddle. It's like the cutest thing ever. That's why they've been secretive, because they were like coming up with this adorable, wonderful surprise. Xaden
I
and
also love
Violet,
the concept of grumpy old man being like,
right,
fine,
it's right,
fine.
it's so cute. It's the chocolate
It's
cake
cute.
thing all over again. It's so cute.
Yeah.
Xaden and Violet flirt a bunch, and then he kisses her, but she finds out that it's just to annoy Dane. To which she responds by telling him that the next time they kiss, it better be just because they both want to. And Xaden's like, next time? So that's fun.
This
And
is the second
Darna,
time.
yeah, yeah. It is the second time. Of course, it'll happen again.
Of
Oh,
course.
wait, it's the third time.
It's the
He
third time?
kisses her, yeah, he kisses her to stall her from panicking and running back to Mira before they escape in chapter 27.
Yes,
So he's
you are
basically
correct.
only kissed her because of extenuating circumstances thus far.
Hence why I would also be like, next time you kiss me, it's only because you want to, not because of whatever is happening. Thank
Correct.
you. Yeah.
Correct. And Darna bounds up to the field and is like, I'm playing too. And Violet's like, okay, all right, let's do it. Violet spots a group so they're off. Violet spots a group of three dragons and she assumes that that's where they're keeping the egg, and she mind to mind speaks to Zayden and is like, hey, I think that's where they're guarding the egg. She spots Liam, so they're like doing their whatever, and then she spots Jack and Liam's dragons going at it. She sees Jack jump onto the back of Liam's dragon and attack him with a sword, and Liam basically falls. And Violet is in a panic. She's like, Taryn, we need to go catch him. He's just out of reach. Violet is panicking. Everyone is panicking. Like, everyone on their wing is trying to go rush to save Liam. And basically, Andarna tells her, like, we're gonna do this. Concentrate on you and Taryn. I will keep everyone else, like, just don't freeze Taryn. Freeze everyone else. Just concentrate on you two together. And she gives her her power again. And Violet manages to, with Taryn, get to Liam just in time to catch him. In a few moments' time, everything snaps back, and she has Liam safely on Taryn's back.
Of Liam,
I
our
know.
king.
I know.
Ugh.
Violet is so mad. She's furious, and she, like, out of anger and fear and panic is like, Jack is not going to do this again. And she basically feels her power building up and she lets it loose in the form of a bolt of lightning, revealing her signet. She's a lightning wielder.
It's so cool. It's so
Amazing.
cool.
It's so good. Chapter 29. The death of a cadet is an inevitable yet acceptable tragedy. This process thins the herd, leaving only the strongest riders, and as long as the cause of death does not break the codex, any rider involved in extinguishing another's life shall not be punished. Major Offendra's Guide to the Rider's Quadrant, unauthorized edition. Oof, yikes.
Yeah. Brutal.
When Violet lands, she knows in her heart that Jack is dead and that she killed him. This is the first kill that she's actually landed thus far.
But like, thank God.
Oh my
I
god,
hate that
yeah.
man. He's a nightmare.
We all cheered when Jack died, let's be real.
100%. Yeah.
Fourth Wing is victorious, and we find out Garrick captured the egg, and Dane still holds on to their flag. Liam is injured, but he is alive, thank goodness. Dane notes, so everyone is like, Violet, lightning wielder. Dane is like, it's been a long time since we've had a lightning wielder, and everyone is discussing it. Violet is like filled with guilt. This was her first kill, and she wishes that she had a signet power that was useful outside of battle. She's basically like, I am a weapon. What does that say? If our signets reveal who we truly are at our core, I'm a weapon. Like that's not a good feeling for her. And Xaden reminds her that her powers are going to save lives in the war effort. He's like, you're more than a weapon, and also you're incredibly powerful, and you are going to save lives by striking out an enemy before they can go and kill innocent people in the village, before they can go and kill Reagan and her new baby. Like your power is more than a weapon. It's going to save lives. After everything, Rhiannon is like, how did you move so fast in the battle? She's like, I saw you going to catch Liam, and I was going to when we were too far away, and it's like I blinked and I missed it, and suddenly you had Liam. And Violet can't really tell her anything, so she kind of brushes it off. Later that night, Xaden comes in to check on Violet. She vents out her frustrations, and they kiss. And then we go to
This time because
chapter
he wants to.
this time because he wants to. Um, he's
Wants to.
like he's like very sweet. I also just want to point out that I've been saying it all along. Xaden is absolutely obsessed with Violet. I don't know how it took her so long to see that. Um,
Because she was not obsessed with him. Yeah.
maybe.
My
So
thought.
they kiss, and then we go to chapter 30, which warning, explicit content coming up.
Oh, is this the? Okay. I don't know chapters. I just know what happens in sequence.
Chapter 30. Though not forbidden, cadets are strongly encouraged not to develop strong romantic attachments while studying in the quadrant for the efficiency of the unit. Article 5, Section 7, the Dragon Riders Codex. They do it. They do it real good.
That's it. Yep.
That's it.
Basically. They also break a wardrobe.
And in doing so, also confirm that she's able to use her power indoors.
In
So
that Xaden's power can block it
and
if
that
needed.
Xaden's power can block it if needed. So basically, they're like getting it on, and right as she is reaching, what word do I use here that's least cringy? Right as she's finishing, that's not great. Right as she is
But as she's, riding that wave.
riding that wave,
Crux of the
she's
wave.
riding that wave, she's almost at the peak there, and just lightning explodes out of her and destroys a bunch of furniture in the room.
Also, like, these rooms are not that soundproof. Just
No.
saying.
Also,
Not for
lightning,
lightning.
which means that thunder also immediately booms. I'm sure everyone was awake.
Which, I guess I've never thought of that. Does that mean every time she uses this, there's a boom?
I think so.
Oh no.
With lightning comes thunder.
That's fair.
So
But there's not, like,
after
a storm, so I didn't know.
no,
Anywho, okay.
no. So after that whole thing, which we'll talk about in deep dive. Sorry everyone. I'm like blushing thinking about it. You
We
can't
are
tell
grown
because of my
women. It
ghost
is fine.
makeup, but it's fine. So after
No, I
that,
can
she
definitely tell.
finally
Sorry, continue, but you are definitely more red.
they're talking, bonding, after the event, and she asks him about the scars on his back, and we find out that basically there's 107 of them, and each one of them is for every marked child. There's 107 marked ones, there's 107 marks on his back. He took a deal where he personally took responsibility over these kids in exchange for giving them a chance to become writers because the alternative was certain death for them. And basically, in addition to those marks on his back, the scars from whatever happened, he says basically, if any of them betray Navarre, I'll die. Which is poor Zayden. Not a bad guy indeed. Whew,
Sweet boy.
I know. The next morning, Professor Carr lets Violet know that she's off of archive duty and that they'll be working together instead, because lightning and books don't exactly mix. They go somewhere farther away where Violet can practice her powers. She has trouble summoning the lightning, which is where we get the iconic line from Taryn, "Shall I get the wing leader?" I died. That quote
It's
will never not be funny.
so good. It's such like sassy Taryn of being
Sassy
like, should I go
Taryn.
get a recreate it again? It'll be fine.
Yeah. While she's doing that, we also get the line from Xaden because they're still speaking mind to mind. There's nowhere in existence that you could go that I wouldn't find you, which is like swoon, that man, I tell you. While Violet continues to have trouble summoning her power to do like a lightning strike, Satan shows Violet memories of the night before, but like from his point of view, this whole scene is wild. She's feeling the feelings, but they're from his point of view, so she's like it's so wild. It's so weird. We have to discuss this in deep dive. I'm gonna move on for time's sake. Essentially that does the trick and she's able to summon the lightning. Um Yes, and so, basically, of course, Professor Carr has no idea what's going on, but Violet, like, understands a little bit better and, like, kind of holds on to that feeling, and they continue practicing her lightning with many more innuendos, might I add, but we find out that
Mm-hmm.
her aim is terrible, and that's
Awful.
basically where we end chapter 30. End of chapter recap, folks. Let's head to section superlatives. Craziest thing to happen this segment.
There's two contenders in my
Mhm.
brain.
Mhm.
Honestly, for me, that was more shocking was Xaden showing up
Mhm.
when she was at the War Games and like the mind speaking, which I feel like it's all kind of the same thing. Like that is all kind
Yes.
of wrapped up in one for me. I kind
I
of saw them boinking, so that was
I
not
well,
necessarily a
yeah.
shock.
I would agree with that assessment. I think that getting to see Mira and that was pretty surprising, but then the way that that whole chapter ends with the Griffin Riders actually coming to
Mm,
attack and they're like trying to get out of there, that was kind of crazy for me. I think for me that put Xaden arriving on the back burner just because I'm like, well, of course he did. He's obsessed with her, but that's just me.
fair,
Yeah.
valid. No, that was like surprising, especially because it's supposed to be like a. I mean, they sent like trainees here. Like, it's not supposed to be like an active post by
Yeah,
any means.
it's supposed to be really safe. So,
Yeah,
safe. Drama queen of the segment?
I mean, it's always Dane,
It is.
but like Dane, just
I
his
don't
whole
think
meltdown on Zayden really like to the point that Mira's like, get it together.
I think you're right. There's no other option for this segment of chapters, truly.
No, I, I mean, it's hard to. Yeah, I mean, in theory, no, it's Dane. Yeah,
It's Dane.
yeah, Dane.
It's Dane. What other ones did I add? Oh, most badass Violet moment?
I mean, killing Jack Barlow.
Yeah, that was incredible.
That might actually have been the most surprising. I forgot that happened. The fact that she wielded her signet and killed Jack all at the same time.
That's true. That's pretty impressive, pretty crazy. And then I guess do we have any new characters to really dive into? We meet Reagan and the nephew and the family. We meet
Which is
some
sweet.
random other people at the outpost, and then I guess like Mira Sorrengail, we really get so much more of her in this segment of chapters.
We get to see her as a person, not as like a essentially a plot device to put Violet in the quadrant
Yeah.
mostly, which is I feel like a little bit what she was in the beginning.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
Yeah.
All right. And now it's time for Colleen's Corner.
Colleen's
Woohoo!
And
Corner.
I'm gonna eat while you do that, so I'm gonna turn my screen
Okay.
off.
Okay. So for Colleen's Corner, I was trying to debate on what this is, what to do with this. And what I decided, and it actually kind of came up a little bit in this chapter, is the juxtaposition between Rhiannon's family and Violet's family. Because we get to see, like, we don't really get to see anyone else's, like, family relationships yet. We mostly only see Violet at this point. And it's very clear, like, her mother is very, like, strict and rough. And, like, what we've seen of her and her father's relationship, it seems warm. But, like, at the same time, I was thinking about this, like, as we were going through this. Violet never had an option to not be in the army, right? So she's in the, like, writer's quadrant now. But she was supposed to be in the scribes quadrant,
She would have been
which
in
is
the army
still,
anyways.
yeah, exactly. The scribe is still the army. So, and like, I think it really dawned on me because like Rhiannon is in it, but her sister isn't. Her sister is just like happily married. It's not like it was a requirement. Like, it was a requirement in her family, which I understand is common with military families. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I understand that that's a common thing. But it was like an expectation of like, you were going to be in one of them. Also, that she only had the option to either be a scribe because of her dad or a writer because of her mom. I think she would have been a cool healer. I actually think she would have been really good as a healer. Like, I just think there's a lot of options that were just not presented to her.
I
And
want to
like seeing
add to
that
that healer
juxtaposed.
thing because of her
Yeah.
poison master abilities. I think you're right. She would have been an incredible healer.
She would have been great. She would have been so good at it, and I think she cares so deeply that, like, if anything, I think it's like it's not a waste because she's an incredible writer as well. But like, almost it was a waste of potential for her that wasn't, which once again is part of the army. But like, she truly was told her whole life, you have one of these two options. You're going into one of them, but actually. Which even like with her dad, just a tidbit in that little like section, which is not necessarily in this section, but her dad's like, oh, she's like, I want to be a writer, and he's like, but you can't. Which I
Hmm.
understand she has like disabilities and things that made it seem like, or maybe she couldn't, but there was just not options for her. Like her life was set, and I really think Mira and Brennan's was too.
Hmm.
And like seeing that juxtaposed, like we never see Rhiannon's family like scolding her for coming to visit them. We see like a warm welcome and them excited and like the warmth. Like I think you kind of see that in how Rhiannon reacts to Violet and like Violet's situation. Because like Violet will say things and Rhiannon's like, what?
Right.
Like,
She'll
that's
be like,
not.
that's kind of messed up.
Yeah, she's like, what do you mean? Or just like, yeah, like seeing that lack of the fact that Violet, I think, is as, or any of the children really are as empathetic as they are seems surprising to me by like, from what we've seen of Lilith. I know we have like some recovered letters and stuff seemingly from her that make her seem more empathetic. She's not very empathetic. She just kind of, like, the poor captain had to basically beg her to give her child like a gold
Yeah,
medal
I
for
know.
something that was like really heroic. And like then they went through this death of their eldest sibling. They don't talk about him. They burned everything like they were supposed to. There just seems like such a lack of general emotional maturity, which I do think does reflect in the kids. I will be honest.
Yeah,
Mira is just aggressive and driven and constantly, I think, trying to prove to her mother that she's worthy of things
right.
truly. And
Hmm.
Violet kind of went the other way of just like, she's like, I'm never gonna get the approval, so I'm gonna do the opposite of everything I'm supposed to do, including literally falling for the person's family that killed my sibling. Like,
Yeah.
just the complete opposite. So I think just seeing, we don't see a lot of, in general, in these books, like family dynamics very much outside of the Sorrengails.
Hmm.
I guess in theory, the Tirish children are related. Like Bodhi and Xaden are cousins.
Right. But that's a
But
whole
that's not,
other level of messed up with that whole
well, because
situation
their
going
family was
on.
murdered, so they don't get to have
Hmm.
that option. But like there's just so much like familial trauma that I think really feeds into like all of this. And like
Hmm.
even seeing like Dylan's family in the beginning, you know, like hugging him, which he died immediately, but like hugging and crying over him, and like he was, you know, gonna be engaged. Like he had this whole life set up for him. From what I can tell by like what Brennan wrote, he didn't really seem to have a plan.
Hmm.
Mira really didn't have a plan for her future outside of this. Violet really didn't either, outside of being a scribe. Like they didn't have any plans for their life outside of what they were told they should
Outside of
have.
going into the military and going through college and graduating and being a part of the military. Like, it's
Yeah,
all
like,
career focused.
which is not a negative. And I'm not saying that like being a career focused person is a negative, but they very, well, I don't know about Mira. Violet very clearly wanted, like, I actually don't think Mira could care less than two craps about romantic attachments. Totally fair. Violet very clearly would like them. So it's just interesting to me to like see. I don't know. I'm not saying that their family dynamic is necessarily negative, but it's clear to pretty much everyone that it's not normal. Is kind of a, normal is a subjective word. It's the best way to put this.
It's
It's
not warm.
dysfunctional.
It's
It's not
dysfunctional.
warm. It's dysfunctional. It's not comforting. And like a lot of that, I'm sure got significantly worse with the grief
Hmm.
loss of her brother. It's going to, especially since he seemed to be the golden boy of the family, at
Yeah.
least from Violet's perspective. We don't really know. I don't feel like Mira has that same sentiment about him, but maybe like we don't really see that.
I think it was more for Mira, honestly, I think it was a golden boy, like, she definitely looked up to him. But it
Yeah,
wasn't, but I don't know if it was as much as Violet looks up to him. But that's
it's in
also
like
like a youngest sibling to the oldest sibling. Sorry, my hair was driving me crazy. I had to take it out.
no, it's okay. I understand. I've
Um,
adjusted my hair like 3 times at least
yeah.
in this process. But
But
like from Violet's perspective, it seems like she thought that her parents' favorite was Brennan, like both of
mhm,
them. Like essentially, his death killed their father, and I think she almost viewed that as like, oh, he must be the favorite. I think he just loved his children very deeply, and there was a lot going on there
yeah.
outside of that. And like her mom just has a lot happening. I don't necessarily know if Brennan was the favorite or not, but it seems he was just the most like settled. I
Mhm.
think like he was out in the field
He was
doing
also
his thing,
like,
which
I feel like he was like the easiest. Like,
yeah, he followed the
he
path. He was
he followed the
smart.
path. Yeah. He
I
took
think he's
on
the
his
most
parents'
like her.
expectations. Yeah.
Very oldest child of him. So
Yeah.
oldest child of him. Also, I was like curious about, which is this, I guess we can go into the deep dive of this part and we can maybe figure out the math. But how long was Brennan out of Basgiath when he died?
Oh, I
Because I
actually
don't
have
think it was
no
that
idea.
long.
Mm-mm.
Like Mira's been out for like a couple of years at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Brennan was in active service when she was in school.
Yeah.
But like I think he was like a year or two out. Like I don't think he was out of college all that long. I don't know, because it's been
I feel
five
like maybe
years.
2, 3 years at the most.
Well, because it's been five, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
don't think there was a huge gap between Mira and Brennan, 5 or 6. And Mira's been out for 3,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't know when he died or when she was in school. Anywho, I don't know. It seems, well, he was alive when she went into school.
Yes.
And it seems like maybe he was out. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I definitely have to look that up. I
Intrigued.
don't know if we actually find any of that out until next book, maybe?
I don't know if we ever figure out how long
Or
it was
maybe ever.
outside.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think we have like a direct timeline for it. Anyway, I just think that's interesting of like
that
how
is
long
interesting.
that is. So
That's
anywho,
super interesting.
that's my rant of family
That's
dynamics and how
Colleen's
that can affect
Corner.
children. Da-da-da.
Amazing. I am going to use this opportunity now to let everyone know there was a section in the last episode where we really went in detail into Violet's dream that she had about her father. I had to cut that
Hmm.
out because the episode was so long. And so I'm going to actually add that into this episode right here so that you guys can get that
Oh.
content because I think it was extremely interesting and I really want to know what people think. So we're going to cut to that now. Then I just realized I actually have one other thing to read that
Ooh.
I thought was really interesting. So it's the when the cadets come to attack her, Violet is sleeping and she's actually having a dream about her father.
Oh,
And I think that
yes.
we get a lot of information from this dream just like for the context of a lot of things, of everything. Okay, ready?
Mhm. Absolutely ready.
You always have to check your sources, Dad tells me, ruffling my hair as he stands beside me at the table in the archives. Remember that first-hand accounts are always more accurate, but you have to look deeper, Violet. You have to see who is telling the story. But what if I want to be a writer? I ask with the voice of a much younger version of me, like Brennan and Mom. Wake, a familiar, consuming voice rumbles through the archives, a voice that doesn't belong here. You're not like them, Violet. That's not your path. Dad offers me an apologetic smile, the usual kind that says he sympathizes, but there's nothing he can do. The kind he gives me when Mom makes a choice he doesn't agree with. And it's for the best. Your mother has never understood that while writers may be the weapons of our kingdom, it's the scribes who have all the real power in this world. Wake before you die. The bookshelves in the archives tremble, and my heart jolts. Now. And then she wakes up. So, the dad is very much a phantom in this book throughout.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but here we get a physical representation of him by a dream. And I think
Hmm.
it's interesting to note, like, I always thought of him as like extremely this like comforting character and stuff. But in
Hmm.
this, and after knowing that scribes are supposed to be composed, he's not really being any different than Lilith. He is being a scribe to his daughter, whereas her mom is being a writer to her the entire time.
Yeah.
I just
But
thought that
not phenomenal parenting
no,
traits. No.
no. It's also interesting that like Lilith Sorrengail did not underestimate Violet. Is she surprised that Violet is still alive? Yes, clearly.
Hmm.
But she wasn't like Violet's too weak to do this. Whereas it looks like her dad truly believed that Violet was too weak to be a writer.
It was interesting. I couldn't decide if he thought she was too weak or if grooming isn't quite the right word, but he's like, one of my children will be a scribe, and Violet's the most likely, which I actually don't think is true. I think Brennan, seemingly what we know of,
Yeah,
like him being like a strategist, would have made a good scribe.
I think so too.
But yeah,
But yeah,
Mira was, I think, born to be a
oh,
writer.
Mira,
But
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and I also thought that his whole thing, first-hand accounts are always the most accurate. This is not a
mhm,
first-hand account that we're reading.
that is true. Also, not always true
Yeah,
in terms of like first.
right, which is why he then says you have to look
Yeah,
deeper, you have to look at who is telling the story.
that's true.
And so if we take that whole, this is not actually a first-hand account, but then we also look further who's telling the story, it's Jacinia. What does that mean?
I think the part, I guess we're assuming these are like diary thoughts. I am intrigued to like is Violet just like
Talking?
telling Ksenia
Mhm.
about how she thought Zayden was real hot at one point?
Honestly, I hope so. That would be so funny.
Like, is this like their old? What I'm hoping, this is ultimately what I want,
Unhinged
is
theory.
this theory is that they're old. And they're like, kind of like the Titanic thing, where like she's telling her kids about the Titanic. That's what I want. Is like Violet is old, and she was like, "That's Aiden.
That Zayden.
Oh,
I would have climbed that
that's
like a
Aiden."
tree.
Love that line. I have definitely said that before, like mildly joking. I've never seen it written in literature, and I'm so happy that it is because it's so good.
It's so good. Um,
It's so good.
I have a theory that I have a theory that because we get a lot of like things are not as they seem. I have a theory that it's not Violet talking to Jacinia and it's not diaries, but somehow the memories are being transferred to Jacinia, and I don't know how.
Well, I mean, I guess Taryn proved that he could.
That's true. But
So I
Jacinia
mean,
doesn't have a dragon.
true.
Yeah. So we'd have to bridge that
Hmm,
gap. But I do think that somehow the reason that it's being presented as such is because it's the direct memories that she's just literally transcribing.
interesting. I like that.
Yep,
I like that.
yep, yep.
All right.
And we're back. Doo-doo.
We're back. Ooh.
All right, let's get on to world building, shall we? And
Ooh,
world
yes.
building slash deep dive, I guess.
Yeah.
Time for a deep dive. So, my thing that I realized as I've been reading these with the lens of literature major on is
Gotcha.
we definitely get a lot of foreshadowing in a lot of ways, but we also
Mm-hmm.
things are just mentioned to us in the chapter that they happen. Like we had no idea about the parapet until literally or the well the parapet that's fine because that was the first chapter. We had no idea
Yeah.
about the gauntlet until like the chapter before. We had no
Mm-hmm.
idea about threshing what it was actually. I mean, obviously we knew dragons were involved, but we didn't know the details of presentation or threshing until I think also maybe the chapter before they happened. Maybe that was two chapters before we had no idea about the squad games until it was literally time to get ready for them. And now here we have the war games. Had no idea that existed in the world until literally they were like, ah, the war games are happening. And I was like, what do you mean? I
Yeah, like this is a normal part of the educational system that we have no clue about.
exactly. I think it's so crazy. I like the way that it keeps you on your toes as a reader and it keeps you interested because as soon
Mm-hmm.
as something finishes you're like oh okay that's over but then nope there's this other crazy thing that's going to happen and the way that that works with the pacing of it I think really works for me but I
Pace
do
as well.
wish that I was ready for it because this book is a little traumatizing with the brutality aspect.
It is. It is very like in your face. It's happening, like not shying away or sugarcoating from that
Yeah.
aspect at all. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I never thought about that. I do remember being like, oh, I do remember thinking, does Violet like Violet grew up here? Did she
Hmm.
not know? She didn't really seem to know it, which is a
I
little bit
don't think
wild
so.
to me. Because like
Hmm.
she grew up at the college in theory, but I mean I know she was studying to be a scribe. I am aware,
Hmm.
but like her whole family was writers.
Right.
Like it's not a plot hole by any means, but like
No,
it's
in
just
theory they would have just not talked about it because first years are supposed to find out in
as
the
you go
first
through it,
years and then like it's not really relevant for scribes to know unless they're like at the level where they're recording those things so
yeah. It's just intriguing to me, which I know I understand the point of it is supposed to be like we're walking through it as if we're also a first year and like we're feeling the like shock and awe and all of that jazz
hmm
along with them, but still, it
it's a
is
lot.
jarring. It
It's
is.
just a lot.
It is a
um
lot.
Drawing another parallel back to Divergent, I think this book actually has so many parallels but it's just done in a different way because there's dragons and magic. I love it. But there's actually a moment in Divergent where they have war game. They're a military faction. They're
Hmm.
the military faction. So they do
Okay.
things like training, war games, classes, things like that as well. And
Oh,
one of
okay.
their war games is a strategy war game and it's capture the flag.
Hmm,
And
that's interesting.
it is also a moment when Triss kind of breaks through barriers with Four, who is the main male interest
Mm,
character.
yes. I remember
And
Theo
they,
James. Yes.
yes, yes, Theo James. Oh God, I love
Love
that
that man.
man.
I do too. He's so good.
So good.
I saw him in a period piece and I lost my mind, by the way.
Was
That's a
it
whole other
Sanditon?
tidbit. Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
I was like, what is happening? I obsessively watched that and then he was gone and I was so upset. I still finished it, but I was upset.
Yeah, same. I was like, this can't be real. It cannot be real. But it was real, but it's fine.
And
Anyways,
watch
anywho.
Sanditon. Very good.
Yeah, please do watch it. It's incredible. And yes, Theo James, the young Theo James, plays Four in Divergent, and he does it so well. My goodness.
I need to
And
watch. By the way, never seen any of those movies. That's on my list of things to
you
do.
need to watch them. Yeah, I
Yeah.
read the books. Um, they were fine. I like the movies better. Internet, don't hate
Oh,
me. I am a reader. I usually like the books better. I think it was maybe just Theo James. I really liked him as Four. He did such a good job.
fair. I have done neither. I know about the books and know about aspects of them because I was in like fandom at the time, but I
Yeah.
did not read
Mhm.
them.
So, yeah, so there's just a really fun parallel between those two scenes where, like, it's not exactly the same. Triss and Four kind of bond and admit that they have something between them during the capture of the flag. It's like a moment where Four is basically obsessed with Triss, and he admits to it a little bit. And we get that a little bit before and definitely after the War Games capture the flag scene here, but it's very much like the feeling
Hmm.
of it. It's like this, you know. I just really thought
There's
that
like an
that was
anticip.
interesting.
I do remember in terms of, which is maybe less literary, but more like character development wise, of like, I don't know, I'm assuming it was distance and maybe Segale or something, but this is the point where like it snaps into place, I think, fully for Zayden. Like, I think he's been obsessed with her. This is the point where I think he makes it like very clear that that's what's happening, at least to me as a reader. I know you have a different thought process on it, but to me, like when he started flirting in her brain, I was like, oh, like I knew it was coming because that's just the nature of
Of
this book.
course.
You could see it coming. That's the point. Um, but like it was like he'd been like lightly flirty, but like more standoffish.
Hmm.
I don't know what happened in Zayden's little head. Actually, we do. There's a POV from Zayden's point of view. Please go read it for this section. So we do actually know what happened in Zayden's mind, and it actually reveals some very interesting things that I don't think it's a spoiler. Maybe.
Spoil it. Do it.
Any when it's in Zayden's POV, it's not actually the dragons that are worried about being separated for 3 days. It's Zayden. Zayden can't handle it. He doesn't like it. It's literally Zayden.
Oh my
That's what
God.
happens in that POV chapter.
I
It's
have
it's
not read
literally
that.
in
That is incredible.
it's Zayden. He's literally like, I don't remember all the details. I think I've read bits and pieces. I don't know if I've read the whole chapter. Shame on me. I think it came out recently. Actually, well, there's two. There's one that came out. It's Zayden's POV from the fight between Zayden and Violet when he throws all the daggers at Dane. We have that from his
Hmm.
POV, and then we have a POV of him. So literally, the dragons can be apart for more than 3 days. It's literally just Zayden. But I think the distance literally snapped in his brain, and he's like, I cannot handle this.
That's
And
incredible.
therefore, which if it's been 3 days, that actually means that it takes 6 hours to get there. It really means it took him two,
Yeah. You're right.
because it took him 6 hours to get there.
You're right. You're
Yeah.
not wrong at all. I love
Yeah.
that so much. That is incredible. I knew he was obsessed with her, and I love that so much.
There's
The
definitely, I
For
mean,
me,
there's a
I
shift.
also think that yeah, there's a shift. I also think that the flirting mind to mind is like he has this I mean, he's got a murdery exterior. He's a grumpy, murdery, bad guy exterior. And
Mhm.
because no one else, it's just between the two of them, he can literally just be himself and he's like just flirty and adorable and hilarious and
And
like
charming. He's so
yeah,
charming.
he is so charming.
You're
So,
like, oh, okay.
yeah, I
This was the
know.
first point. Like, I liked Zayden. I am more of a Liam girly, if we're being honest. I love Liam. But I liked Zayden. this chapter hit, and I was like, I don't know, man. I like Zayden a lot. I like them both. I think they're a tie in different ways, but Zayden is so good in this
Yeah.
section. This is where my obsession with him started. Was here.
That's fair. I think the first time I read it, this is where my obsession with him started as well. To be fair, to be completely fair, I knew that he was gonna be end game, at least
Yeah.
for this book. We don't know if she's
Yes.
gonna pull a Sarah J. Maas or not. But
That'd be wild.
I don't know
Wild.
what I don't know what I would do. I would be crushed. But
Right.
But, I was like, "Okay, like, hot murdery guy, enemies to lovers, I'm ready, like, let's go." And I
Yeah.
don't
Knew that going in.
Yeah, I knew that, and I don't think that while I do love characters up front, the feelings are usually, like, pretty superficial, but then this started happening, and I was like, "Oh my god, Xaden," and I was like, "Oh my god, like, this character I am completely in love with, completely."
I agree. Reading this, so when we were prepping for like this, because I have no self-control, I read this book in like a week when I reread it.
Mhm,
When we started recording all of these things. And I read it right after I had finished A Court of Thorns and Roses. Maybe A Court of Mist and Fury. I can't remember. I may have went on to A Court of Mist and Fury. And then switching over to Xaden is actually so wild. I think I literally texted you and said I would pick Xaden over Resand. I couldn't even
yeah.
remember that man's name, clearly.
You did
Um,
text me that, and I hadn't read it yet, so I was like, "Oh, I don't know," but I 100% agree with you now.
on a
1 million
reread,
percent.
like I Resand is great. He is great. He is too controlled. And I don't like that. I like a
Yeah.
little recklessness. There's
I'm
a
also
little more
more of a
emotion.
Cassian girly, so
I'm also a Cassian girly. I think I could be converted to an Asriel girly, depending on how his book is written.
yeah, agreed.
If I'm gonna pick between the boys, I would love Cassian. I also love Lucian, which I think I think Xaden is Lucian if he had shadows.
Ooh, ooh. Tell us
I
more.
also they both have that like flirty snark about them. Like I think Lucius went more into that like emissary, like flirty, like
Mhm,
calm role. I think Xaden could have had two paths, right? He chose the like grumpy Gus,
mhm.
hard exterior path because they have kind of similar traumas in a way, not
They do.
necessarily, but like lack of family, certain things. Lucian went the like flirty, vibrant court emissary that's intelligent, and I would say that Xaden is also is. Xaden kind of went the path of like grumpy,
Mhm.
flirty, but they flirt the same. They flirt the
They
exact
do.
same.
You're not
That
wrong.
kind of like cheeky, like, what are you gonna do? It's very like bratty, which I like. There's a very like very much a brattiness about
Love
how
it.
they flirt.
Yes. No, I think that's a great. Oh my god, that means that Xaden is Lumiere also.
Xaden is he's he's Lumiere to Violet and Cogsworth to everyone else.
Yes. Yes, he is.
Because he has much more of that like I don't know. I think I do truly forget how his persona is to like everyone else,
Mhm.
essentially. Um but sorry, got a text. But like his persona to everyone else is that like grumpy, I don't know, like stately, like too cool for you, don't talk to me vibe. And then him with Violet's like, what are you gonna do about it? Huh?
Yeah.
You gonna try it again? Him and Taryn have the same vibe
Oh my god,
as
yes. I
well,
think we've discussed this. Like, Xaden is Taryn.
which is why we love Taryn.
Yeah. Which is why Taryn
Yeah,
is hot and a beast.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, 100%. They're the same.
absolutely.
Just he's just a little older.
So, we have two options that we can talk about now. We can talk about that scene, which I do think that we need to touch upon. We can
We do.
also, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the less subtle conspiracy hints that we've been getting, like
Mm.
progressively more. There's something going on, and I definitely want to talk about that. Which one would you like to talk about first?
Which one are you more comfortable with talking about first, Dorsha? Because I don't really care. I'm good with both.
Let's talk about the sex scene first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Get that out of the way. Like,
Yeah, get that out of the way. I am
get
not
it going.
I joined a spicy book club. I did this to
You did.
myself. I am not comfortable
You did.
talking about this. It's
You joined a spicy book
silly.
club that you invited me to,
Yes, that was
which I
my
was reading.
choice.
It was, yes. I read Spice beforehand. My mother does listen to these. Mom, if you don't want to listen to this part,
Oh yeah.
this is the point to fast forward.
Mom and uh my friend in India, Vaishali, Thai, if you're listening to this with your daughter, skip this part. Um,
And don't listen to
please.
this part. Go on. It's
Um,
totally fine.
yeah. So, okay, from a like clinical perspective, I love the way that this scene was written so much.
It's it's so well written, and it's not like there was never, which in our book club we had this question of, did this scene ever give you a pause where you're like, how does that work? And to me, I think that's a good sign of like a good scene. It did
Mhm.
not. I was never
Yes.
confused about like the amount of limbs
The
or like
anatomy and the
the
logistics,
anatomy.
physics.
Yeah. It felt romantic isn't the right word, but it didn't feel dirty either.
Mhm.
Like 'cause some like scenes in books can feel like dirt, like down and dirty kind of
Yeah.
thing, but it wasn't necessarily romantic either. It was just like a release
Yeah,
in general.
it did very much. I agree with that. It didn't feel romantic. I think the romance came like afterwards when they were like
Yeah.
talking about their past and bonding a little
Yeah, the
bit.
pillow talk. Yeah.
The pillow talk,
They had
yeah,
some
which
wild
I
they had some wild pillow talk.
they did have some wild pillow talk. I think it's genius in that like while they're I don't know if I've ever read one that's this well done where like you can feel the passion when you're reading it and you can right?
Yes.
And you feel that intimacy there. Like, obviously, this
Mhm.
is one of the more intimate things you can do, obviously, with a person. But then you feel
Yes.
them building that intimacy afterwards, too, when they're talking. I was like, "Ugh,"
Mhm.
everything about it. Amazing.
It feels like it's an actual like she wrote the scene not to have a sex scene in it. She wrote the scene because it was like in her mind the logical next step of where they were going to go, and this was just how their relationship was progressing, not
Hmm.
with the intent of being like gotta put a spicy scene in it. I've read some books where like it's clear that they just put it there to have a scene.
Cough, cough, Zodiac Academy. Cough, cough.
I have not read those yet.
I am on book 5 right now. They do get spicier as you go along. I'm literally at the point I was listening to it this morning and I was just like skipping through the sex scene. I was like, not another one. Give me more of the plot.
I have heard great things about those novels. I have heard you have to get through the first like 3 of them or something.
Hmm.
It is on my list. I am not there yet. I'm actually listening to the other book for our book club when I come see you.
Yay.
Um, but yes, yeah, I'm going to go see her soon. Very excited about that.
Very
But
excited. We're going to have another in-person podcast recording, so that's
yeah,
going to be fun.
this scene I think is very well done. It's well written. It doesn't feel like we're intruding. I've also read sex scenes where it feels like I'm intruding.
Hmm.
And you're like, I don't think I should be here.
Hmm.
Like that's the ones that I fast forward. Where I'm like, if this doesn't feel like a moment that I should be a part of, I'm gonna
Yeah.
nope out of it. This was definitely not one of
Yeah.
those, I would
Not at
say.
all. And then like it was so like it wasn't romantic, it wasn't dirty. It was super sexy though.
It was hot. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Like I read this so I read audiobooks, listen to audiobooks, read audiobooks at work.
Mhm.
Every time I get to this part, I have to take a headphone out and just like sit for a little bit because I'm like this is like it makes me like it's one of the few scenes where I'm a little bit like, "Oh,
Yeah.
like this is intense for me and I have to take a pause."
Mhm.
Calming down isn't the right word, but like take a mental break.
Like process it and like move on.
Process. Yeah. Yes. I'm like, if someone tried to talk to me right now, I would have a hard time articulating words. I
Yeah.
need a moment.
I would agree. I would
Yes,
agree. It's yes.
because
Bravo, Rebecca Yarros.
Rebecca, Rebecca, you did great. You made it well written the way that didn't really make anyone uncomfortable for the most part, which I
Mhm.
appreciate.
Yeah. Also, congrats on not using the most cringy language in the world to describe things. Like, I don't know. I'm not trying to like shame anyone here. Different types of dirty talk work for different people. None of that works for me. I'm like, shut your mouth on the dirty talk. Stop talking and just like let's just do things, you know? Like,
The reason that makes me feel weird about it is it's just like no one says that.
yeah.
Like it's the only people who say that are like 18-year-olds that are figuring it out.
Yeah.
Like no real person, especially at sometimes the age of the characters, I'm like I like start looking up the author's age. I'm like, how
Yeah.
old were you when
When
you
you
wrote
wrote
this?
this.
Like
Yeah.
I read a lot of fan fiction. There was a lot of that when you could tell the age of the person writing the fan fiction by the language that they used surrounding it. Like, that's not how that works. No, thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, good job. I am looking forward to more. I will say, so like Fourth Wing I would not describe this as a spicy book series, at
No.
all.
I
It's
actually forget that
not
it has spice
right.
when I
It's not
recommend it to
even
people.
really romance. Like romance, spice are secondary, even maybe third on the list of importance. It's about the war college and the war that's happening and all of that.
I will say it becomes a little bit more about that in Iron Flame in terms of
Hmm.
romance.
Yes,
It's
it
like more of a
does.
plot driver in Iron Flame, but I wouldn't say it's like I wouldn't
Don't
call it a
get me
romance
started.
novel.
It's so frustrating, but that's fine. Yes,
We'll get there. We'll get there. We're gonna
we'll
talk
get
about
there.
it. It's
We'll get
fine.
there.
But I will say there's more of a romance plot
Yeah.
line and like how it's driven in that one.
It
Yeah.
is. But that's what makes it, I think that might also, for me, make them more impactful. Where I'm
Hmm.
like, I don't need to see them, having sex every few chapters or whatever. I assume
Is
that
this
once
the
they've started, they find time to do it, or even just being like, I spent the night and whatever. I think it's very tastefully done.
it's the there's two. I think there's only two scenes
I think
and
so.
one of them gets interrupted, which is later. Like I was like trying to think, I was like, I don't know if this might be the only one. But I forgot because it's actually one of my favorite scenes, which we haven't got to yet, is the one where they get interrupted.
Now that
Yes.
we've talked about sex for like, 10 minutes, I think it was.
Clock back in.
Let's
Mom, you can come back now.
Yeah, Vaishali, you can come back with your daughter now. We, um, what was I gonna say? Oh, conspiracy. Okay, correct me if I'm missing anything here, but what we know about conspiracy in this world so far. First of all, this is a transcription of someone else's accounts, so everything that we're reading, we don't even know if it's real or not. There's that.
True.
Then there's this whole thing about this very religious, it's kind of like we've discussed this, it's kind of cult-like of a society where it's highly military, highly religious, like strict rules of a kingdom that they're working within. There is a mysterious lore that apparently not everyone knows about as well, in addition to a missing book from the archives, which is the book that Mira took from home so that Violet could have it with her again. It's the Book of Fairy Tales.
Mhm.
We have Zayden and a few other marked ones. Are they a covert military special unit? Why are they always sneaking around at night? No one knows. They are bonded to dragons, so they're not betraying Navarre, but something's going on there that no one knows about. We have missing
Yeah.
information. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was saying yes, they're
Mhm.
sneaky. I was just
They're,
agreeing.
they're sneaky. We have
Sneaky, sneaky.
missing information, reports that are not marked confidential that don't make it to battle brief, mysterious sightings of dragon riots flying that no one talks about, chalked up to more secret missions, which again, entirely possible. And then we have the dragon secrets of it all, where this community you have this society of people entirely reliant upon the society of dragons. We know basically nothing about the society of dragons. And there's all of these secrets surrounding dragons and dragonkind and Andarna and Feathertails. And there's just like so much intrigue. And I want to know what's going to happen. I want to know what's happening.
There's a lot of mystery that I feel like is mentioned, and Violet is just wildly to me for someone who loves information. Is just like, okay, right? She's very just like
Yeah,
not
like,
the focus right
whatever.
now, which is fair. She's trying not to die. She's got a lot going on, but I do find
Mhm.
it, like the Feathertail thing. Like she knows more than most people,
Yeah.
but she's just kind of like, all right, and Darna will tell me when she tells me.
Mhm.
I would be grilling that dragon so hard,
Yeah, I'd
so
be like,
hard.
"Tell
I'd
me
be
more,
like,
please. Like, I promise I won't tell anyone else. What are like, tell me everything."
you're like, I'm bonded to you. I'm not gonna tell anyone. Like, why are you not
Yeah.
telling me anything about yourself at this
Mhm.
point? Like, so is a Feathertail just an adolescent dragon? So what is she gonna turn into? Right? Or
Right.
a Feathertail is like full grown dragon? Like, we don't like what do they
We don't
look
know
like?
anything.
We have no
We
clue.
know nothing. There's also I do think that honestly it's kind of clever, and I don't know if this was intended or not, but they're all in this cult. I'm just calling it a cult. Their kingdom is basically a cult.
Cool. Yeah.
Um, you see signs of that sort of brainwashing aspect of it really early on. They all follow this religion, they're very strict in their ways. They trust that the scribes present the information unbiased. They trust that the things that they're being told are true. And I think that even though Violet is incredibly intelligent and has that scribe's mind, there's just so much of a wall of this brainwashing that, like, this is the way things are, this is the way things have always been. She takes everything as it is. And I think that it's only because she's so smart that she even questions it. I don't think.
True.
And then, because like the only other person who was with her, Liam, when they found that scroll, he questioned it. He's a marked one, though. Like he probably was raised questioning everything that's been told to them.
True. It's intriguing to me in terms of like, yeah, which the cult like aspect does make sense in terms of
Mhm.
like, especially with her not really having a normal structure in life. Like, there's people that are like in the cult, but not in the cult. She's in the cult.
Yeah.
She was raised in it. Her parents are leaders in it. Like, I mean, her dad was very clearly like a pretty high up scribe. Like,
Yeah.
they're in the cult.
Solidly in the cult. So
Yes.
I'm so curious. And then we know like the marked ones meeting at night. And that one like throwaway line of like learn what they teach you, not what you know. Whole thing, like what do you mean? What does that mean? When are we going to hear more about this?
And she never asks him Zayden about it. I get why she doesn't. I do think there's a lot of avoidance on Violet's part because she doesn't really want to know, which is so fair. Like I get everyone comes to like what they want to know in their own time frame. But like she has a lot of these pieces. I think it's kind of apparent that Zayden has a lot of the answers, right?
Yeah.
And she's just like not gonna ask. She asks him
Hmm.
what his favorite food is, but she doesn't ask him the questions that she probably
You know?
should or maybe needs to ask.
Yeah.
Um, intent that comes up a lot later, but that's a whole thing. Uh, so
But yeah. And then I also really like the Zayden, he's full of secrets, so his signet is shadows. I love that so much.
it's a really interesting, like in terms of a magic system, the way
Hmm.
that it like manifests itself. Because you would think it's like based on the dragon, right? Like if you bond this dragon, you get this signet. Or like you
Hmm.
bond this one, then they have these types of powers that are available to you. Not that it's like they just give you the magic. You do what you do with it.
Yeah.
Like that's all on you. That's a really interesting system, I think.
It's the one it's like the only thing about bonding dragons and their relationship with dragons and all of that is the only thing that has anything to do with the human rather than the dragon. Everything else is on the dragon's terms.
It is. Yes. Which is why dragons are basically cats.
Yes. Yes, they are. Yeah, but all right, folks. Well, signing out, signing off. Boo. That was a
Woo!
weird. Yeah, that's the boo doesn't come out like that. Sorry, everyone. Let me try that again.
That was great.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Happy
Incredible.
Halloween. Stay safe.
Yes.
Have
Stay safe,
fun.
get some
Stay
candy.
safe. Get some candy. Yeah.
Dress up to your heart's
Bye.
content, because
Yeah.
I do love those. Bye!
Sorry, I cut you off. Say that again.
You're fine. Oh, I said dress to your heart's content, because I do love costumes, but...
Yeah, costumes are fun. All right, everyone. Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Hi, me again. I am here to let you all know where to find us. You can find us on Instagram at BookWitchesPod. You can find us on Spotify at BookWitches with a B. You can find us on YouTube at BookWitches with a B, and you can find us on TikTok at BookWitchesPod. All of this information is also going to be listed below our episode, and it's going to be listed in the ending credits if you're watching along with us in the videos. We'll catch you guys soon.